Hi guys, I'm Doug Baulos. I'm a professor at UAB. Today's workshop is a natural dye shibori workshop using round stones and natural dyes you can find in your freezer, your refrigerator, or your yard. Great for children and for adults both. So today we're going to be doing a natural dye process, and it's based on the idea of a Japanese enzo, which is a circle meditation. In a lot of times in India or in Japan or in Africa, they'll use different types of found stones. So like if you have kids around, you can have them go collect stones, but you can use any type of round thing. Like you can use an acorn, you can use a walnut, you can use some dried beans that you have in your pantry already. And basically what you're going to do is it's very similar to tie-dye. It basically is tie-dye, but it's the same process over and over again, which can become like a circle meditation. And you can start to talk about things like, what is a perfect thing? What is an imperfect thing? Is it possible to make a perfect circle or to have a perfect cycle in your life? So what you would do is you would just go collect a bunch of stones, and then you use rubber bands or string to tightly tie them. And a lot of times I make these little Halloween type ghost kind of things, but you can also do like patterns. Like if you notice, I've kind of done a square pattern that um, has a bean in the middle to be a circle. But when you're using fabric, it's important that the fabric has been boiled first if possible, because a lot of times if like you're working with an old sweatshirt, it might be what you think of as clean, but it still has stuff in it. So like if you can boil it, that's great. And so that prepares your fabric. And I will say like cotton and linen work great, but you could also try what we call animal protein fabrics, which is like silk. That would work great. So the first thing you're going to do is like take an acorn and you're just going to put it into your fabric. And usually what I do is I press down and then I give it about a 180-degree twist like that. And then I'll take a rubber band or a piece of string. And this is the part that kids might not be able to get it quite tight enough, because you want it to be tight enough to really resist. And so you will just tie it around, and if it breaks, just put another one on it. But you could also put like another design with the rubber band further down, and that will create like more of a traditional tie-dye pattern, like the rings of Saturn or something like that. So you can see like this is just a very irregular rock. So you can see like how really the shape of the rock you found really determines the quality and the kind of plastic contour of the shape that's going to be made. And the thing I really like about the acorns is that sometimes when you're using the acorn, it gets darker in the middle because the acorn is acting as a natural dye too. Like, so if you use a walnut or an acorn, contrary to like a rock or a stone. There are hundreds and hundreds of dyes that you can find probably in your yard, but I'm going to focus on a few select things that I think are seasonally you would be able to find these things. But it's really fun to have kids help you collect things, and also like, you know, they love pouring things into jars and labeling things and stuff like that. So like just regular pine cones, acorn caps, the stem of the blackberry, the wild blackberry, eucalyptus. Like a lot of people might even have this in a corner of their house somewhere in an old arrangement, and it doesn't matter how dried out it is, like it will still make a really great dye. Dandelions are great. I only use the flower, and you know, you can have a little bit of the stem, but it's mostly the flower. But it makes a really, really very golden yellow, and you can see like this is a dandelion dyed thing that I did a Kumo pattern on, and then I put another stone in after it was totally dry. And I found like a bag of blueberries that was totally freezer burned and pretty inedible. And so I just dyed that. And then this is a red onion skin red dye. And there's all kinds of things besides the things we talked about, like maybe you have some old black beans, and that makes a really beautiful blue-gray color. Or if you have like some spinach that you don't know how long has been in your freezer, and it's like become that frozen ice cube thing, like that's a perfect way to make a really beautiful green. I didn't mention like everything that's in your freezer, but basically it's probably going to be a fruit, or it's probably going to be a vegetable. When I'm cooking down fruit to make dye, if I use a cup of water to start the first dye, I add about 4 tablespoons of salt to it. If I'm cooking down something that's organic, like a vegetable or a nut, I usually add vinegar to it. So I'll add like 4 tablespoons of vinegar to the water. There's dyes that are formative, which means they'll dye almost everything, but there's also dyes that we call fugitive. That means like they're on run from the law, because like they'll look beautiful when you dye them, but if you put them in a drawer, even out of the light, like 8 years later, it will be white fabric again. But like a lot of times you'll hear people talking about dyeing with beets, and I consider beets to be an extremely fugitive dye, so I would never dye with beets. It's a beautiful color, like you guys have probably always eaten beets, and I love like pickled beets, but unfortunately it doesn't stay that color very long. And so those are some of the natural dye colors, and now we're going to move, and I'm going to talk to you about how we cook our natural dyes. So now we're going to talk about how to cook or prepare the dyes and try to get some information about how to really get the pigment to come loose from the natural materials and get into your liquid dye bath. And I've tried to find a way to make it as easy as possible, so without compromising quality. So you need something like enamel, like this little old pot, or something glass. And glass jars with lids work great. And it's a fun thing to have kids sort the glass jars for different dyes and what they want to use. So if I have my acorn caps, a lot of people think that you would just take this and simmer it forever. But if I am making a dye, what I basically do is I use a 1-to-1 ratio of the dye part, or the dye matter, to hot water. And when I say hot water, I mean like boiling hot water. And so like, let's say I wanted to make that much dye, which I know this is a blue thing, but basically I'm just going to take some hot water out of my slow cooker, and I'm going to fill the hot water up to the top level of the acorn caps, and then I'm going to put my lid very tightly on and just make sure that it's all saturated. And what I would do is leave this for 8 hours, and then 8 hours later, what I do is I take this and I would put the liquid. You can either use a piece of like thin material, or you can use a little mesh screen. And I would pour it over into a new container. So I just have the liquid left. And then guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to add more of my stuff for a second round. And a lot of times people are always like, I tried to make something that you did and it was only very faint. And so like I sometimes do this 3 to 5 times. And so just give it another little shake, and then I'll put it into like a double boiler. Yeah. Then you can just have it be in your hot water and it'll reheat it. And then I leave it in there, like in here for like another 35 minutes, and then take it out, let it cool for 8 hours, and do it again. You can see like I've done that with these walnuts. And so this is my second cook of the walnuts. And now I'm going to just pour it out. And you can see, can you guys see how dark that is? So it will become like a really, really dark walnut dye. And that's just because I used 2 parts. You know, I did it once and then twice again. So if I put my fabric in there. It doesn't even have to stay in there very long, and look how dark it is. And so it looks almost black, you know, they do call it black walnut. But like when it's dry, it will be a really beautiful walnut color. Okay, you guys, so this is a piece of ordinary white fabric that I scoured or boiled. And then I put the acorn in it, and then I dipped it in the blueberry dye twice. And what I do is I dip it in and let it sit there for about 3 to 5 minutes, and then I just hang it up on my fence or somewhere and let it dry for about an hour, and then I usually dip it again. And so now we're going to undo it, and you can sometimes save the rubber bands, but I think this is one where the rubber band broke and I put another one on top of it. And it's pretty easy to get it off. And so you can see, then you just separate it, and it's made the Kumo design. And this one's actually pretty round for an acorn. Probably going to do a workshop at Studio by the Tracks. So if you guys are interested, you can DM us or you can send us a message, and we'll arrange to do a workshop. Like if you guys want to do a specific type of natural dye, or shibori, or learn more about echo printing. After this all is over, we can come together and have a blast. And thanks for being here today.